The deep space between stars held no mercy for the weak. Admiral Vorthok knew this truth better than most as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see his fleet stretched across the void like a metal constellation. 212 vessels of the Keth Empire, each one a masterpiece of war engineering, each one hungry for battle. The Keth had ruled this sector of space for 3 centuries. Their ships were sleek predators, hulls gleaming with energy shields that could stop asteroids. Their plasma cannons could melt through the strongest armor, and their crews were born for conquest. They patrolled the border between their empire and the pathetic human territories. Commander Thek approached the Admiral's command throne. His forearms moved in the traditional gesture of respect. "Admiral, our sensors detect a single vessel approaching the checkpoint. It appears to be human." Vorthek's mandibles clicked in what humans might mistake for laughter. "One ship? Just one?" He activated the main display, and the image that appeared made several bridge officers actually laugh out loud. The human vessel looked like something pulled from a scrapyard and barely held together with hope. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals clearly salvaged from various sources.
Ow.
Burn marks and impact craters dotted its surface. Parts of the ship seemed to be held together with visible welding seams. It moved slowly through space, almost limping along its course. "What is that thing supposed to be?" asked Navigation Officer Krek, pointing at the screen with one of his claws. "That, my friends, is human engineering," Vorthok said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Look at it. It cannot even build a proper ship. No wonder they lost the last 3 border skirmishes." The human ship came to a stop at the designated checkpoint, its engines sputtering like a dying animal. Vorthok opened communications, making sure to broadcast on all frequencies. This was too good not to share with the watching galaxy. "Unknown human vessel. This is Admiral Vorthok of the Keth Imperial Fleet. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." The response came in broken, static-filled transmission. "This is the EU's Resilience," Captain Marcus Reed commanding. "We are requesting safe passage to neutral space. Our ship has mechanical problems and we need to reach a repair station." Vorthek's laughter echoed through the bridge. The human captain sounded tired, defeated. His voice carried the weight of someone who knew he was outmatched. "Captain Reed, you say, 'Tell me, human, do you see the 200 ships surrounding you?' 'Yes, sir, we see them.' 'And yet you dare to request passage through our space in that flying junk pile?" Vorthok gestured to his communications officer. "Broadcast this across all known frequencies. Let the galaxy see what happens when humans try to challenge the Keth Empire." The signal went live across multiple star systems. On dozens of worlds, beings stopped their daily activities to watch the spectacle. Here was the mighty Keth fleet, the terror of the Outer Rim, facing off against a single human ship that looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed on it. "Captain," Reed's image appeared on the screen. He was a middle-aged human with graying hair and tired eyes. His uniform was clean but old, patched in several places. Behind him, the bridge of his ship looked cramped and outdated. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and his crew looked nervous and scared. "Admiral Vorthok, we mean. No trouble. We just want to pass through to reach neutral space. Our ship is badly damaged, and we have injured crew members who need medical attention." This made Vorthok laugh even harder. "Injured crew? On that rust bucket? I am amazed you have any living crew at all." He turned to his officers. "Look at it. This pathetic display? This is what the humans call their navy?" The human captain seemed to shrink into his chair. "Please, Admiral, we are no threat to you. Our weapons are offline, our shields are failing. We just want to get home. Home." Vorthek's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "You think I will just let you pass? You think the mighty Keth Empire shows mercy to trespassers?" He leaned forward in his command throne. "No, Captain Reed. You and your scrap heap will serve as an example to any other humans who think they can cross our borders." The human ship drifted helplessly as Keth vessels moved into attack formation. The formation was perfect, a textbook encirclement that allowed for maximum firepower while preventing any chance of escape. It was the same formation that had destroyed the human fleet at Kepler Station just 2 years ago. You see, Captain, Vorthok continued, still broadcasting to the galaxy. This is what happens when an inferior species challenges their betters. Your ship is a joke. Your technology is primitive. Your people are weak. Captain Reed's shoulders sagged. Admiral, please. We have families aboard this ship. Non-combatants, civilians. Then you should have thought of that before entering our space. Vorthok's voice turned cold. Prepare to be boarded. Your ship will be taken as a prize, and your crew will serve as slaves in our mines. This is the price of human arrogance. Watching Galaxy held its breath. This was not uncommon. The Keth Empire was known for such displays of power. Human ships had been captured before, their crews enslaved or killed. It was the natural order of things. The strong dominated the weak, but something about this felt different. Captain Reed sat very still in his command chair, and for just a moment, his tired eyes seemed to flash with something that was not fear. It was gone so quickly that most observers missed it entirely. Admiral Reed said quietly, "You are making a mistake." Vorthok nearly choked on his own laughter. A mistake? Me. I have never made a mistake in battle, human. I have destroyed over 50 enemy ships in personal combat. I've conquered 7 star systems. What could a human in a garbage scow possibly teach me about mistakes? The human captain looked directly into the camera, and for a split second, his expression was not that of a defeated man begging for mercy. It was the expression of someone who knew something that no one else did. You will learn soon enough, Reed said softly. The transmission from the human ship suddenly improved. The static cleared, and the image became sharp and clear. For a moment, everyone watching wondered if their equipment had malfunctioned. Then, Captain Reed smiled, and it was not the smile of a frightened man. The silence that followed Captain Reed's words lasted exactly 2.3 seconds. AIDA had calculated the optimal moment for maximum psychological impact, and the artificial intelligence was never wrong about such things. The first quantum torpedo fired. Before Admiral Vorthok could even process what he was seeing, the weapon was invisible to Keith's sensors, a ghost of destruction that phased through the energy shields of the nearest cruiser as if they were made of paper. The torpedo materialized inside the ship's reactor core and detonated. The cruiser didn't explode in the traditional sense. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a burst of energy that lit up the darkness of space. The shockwave hit 3 nearby vessels, sending them spinning out of control. Before the light from the first destruction had faded, 11 more torpedoes were already flying through space toward their targets. Each one found its mark with perfect precision. Ships that had ruled the void for centuries were erased from existence in heartbeats. Admiral Vorthok stared at his tactical display in shock. 12 ships. Gone. Just like that. His perfect formation was suddenly full of gaps where proud warships had been moments before. All ships, open fire, he screamed into his communicator. Destroy that human vessel now. But the resilience was no longer where it had been. The moment the shooting started, the ship had moved with a speed and agility that should have been impossible. It twisted through space like a living thing, avoiding plasma bolts and missile strikes that should have turned it into scrap metal. The adaptive armor plating along the hull began to glow as it absorbed incoming energy. But instead of dispersing the heat like normal armor, the Resilience's hull collected it, stored it, and then redirected it back at the attacking ships in focused beams of destruction. The Keth destroyer fired its main plasma cannon directly at the human ship. The beam struck the hull and vanished, absorbed completely. 3 seconds later, that same energy erupted from the Resilience's hull as a return shot that sliced the destroyer in half. On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain Reed stood calmly behind his command chair, watching the battle unfold. His crew worked with quiet efficiency, no longer pretending to be frightened civilians. These were some of the best military personnel humanity had ever produced, and they had trained for this moment for 3 years. AIDA status report, Reed said. The The artificial intelligence's voice filled the bridge with its calm, mechanical tone. 14 enemy vessels destroyed. Enemy formation integrity compromised. Optimal attack pattern Alpha 7 is recommended. For maximum efficiency, execute Alpha 7, Reed ordered. Lisa Park, no longer playing the role of a scared communications officer, coordinated the attack from her station. Her fingers danced across controls that had been hidden during the deception phase. Microdrone swarms launching in 3, 2, 1 mark. From hidden ports all along the Resilience's hull, thousands of tiny machines shot out into space. Each microdrone was no bigger than a human fist, but they were packed with enough explosive power to punch through standard armor plating. They moved too fast for the Keth Point defense systems to track. Swarming over enemy ships like angry insects, the drones didn't explode immediately. Instead, they attached themselves to enemy hulls and began cutting through the armor with molecular-thin cutting beams. When they reached critical systems, they detonated from within, causing cascading failures throughout entire ships. A Keth battlecruiser tried to ram the Resilience, thinking that its massive bulk would crush the smaller human vessel. But the human ship was ready for this too. At the last moment, the Resilience fired grappling cables that latched onto the battlecruiser's hull. Instead of being crushed, the human ship used the enemy's momentum to swing around and fire a full spread of torpedoes directly into the larger ship's engines. The battlecruiser's reactor went critical, and the explosion took out 2 more ships that were too close to escape the blast radius. Chief Weapons Officer David Kim managed the torpedo launchers with deadly precision. Each shot was calculated by AIDA to cause maximum damage and chaos. He didn't just target the ships themselves, but also the spaces between them, using the explosions to create debris fields that interfered with the Keith formation. Captain, David reported, we're at 60% torpedo capacity. Recommend switching to kinetic bombardment. Reed nodded. Do it. The Resilience suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvers and positioned itself among the wreckage of destroyed Keth ships. Using its tractor beams, it began collecting chunks of metal and debris. Then, with incredible precision, it started firing these pieces at the remaining enemy vessels. A section of destroyed cruiser hull, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, struck a Keth frigate with the force of a nuclear bomb. The frigate crumpled like aluminum foil. Twisted metal beams became spears that pierced through multiple ships at once. The Keth fleet, which had started the battle with overwhelming superiority, was being systematically destroyed by a single human vessel using their own destroyed ships as weapons. Admiral Vorthok watched in horror as his fleet died around him. Ships that had conquered star systems were being swatted out of existence like flies. His crews, trained from birth for war, were helpless against an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Fall back, he ordered. Fall back to defensive positions. But there was nowhere to fall back to. The Resilience had positioned itself perfectly, using the debris from destroyed ships to create barriers that prevented escape. The human vessel had turned the battlefield into a maze of destruction, and it knew every path through the chaos. Dr. Sarah Chen, working from her hidden tactical station, monitored the enemy's movements and predicted their responses. Her years of study were paying off perfectly. Every move that Keith made had been anticipated and countered. Admiral Vorthok is trying to regroup his remaining ships into a defensive sphere, she reported to Captain Reed. It calculates a 78% probability that he will attempt to concentrate fire on a single target. Then, let's not give him the chance, Reed replied. Tom, I need maximum power to the engines. In engineering, Tom Walsh had dropped all pretense of being a simple mechanic. His hands moved over controls that managed some of the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. You've got it, Captain. The reactor's running at 112% of rated capacity. The Resilience accelerated directly toward the reforming Keth fleet. It should have been suicide. The concentrated firepower of the remaining ships should have been able to destroy anything that came close. But the human ship was no longer playing by conventional rules. As it approached the enemy formation, it began to spin on its axis, creating a moving target that was almost impossible to hit. Its adaptive armor deflected or absorbed every shot, and its return fire was devastatingly accurate. The ship passed through the Keth formation like a bullet through tissue paper, destroying 6 more vessels in the process. When it emerged on the other side, it immediately turned around for another pass. Admiral Vorthok realized with growing horror that he was not fighting a battle. He was watching an execution. His mighty fleet, the pride of the Keth Empire, was being methodically destroyed by a single human ship that had pretended to be helpless junk. The galaxy was still watching. The live broadcast that was supposed to show human weakness was instead demonstrating something far more terrifying. It was showing that humanity had been hiding its true capabilities, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. On worlds across known space, beings who had dismissed humans as primitive and weak were reconsidering their assumptions. If one human ship could do this to the Keth fleet, what could humanity's full military might accomplish? Captain Reed stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as the last of the enemy ships were systematically eliminated. His expression was calm, professional, almost bored. This was not a desperate fight for survival. This was a demonstration, carefully planned and perfectly executed. "Aida," he said quietly, "how many enemy vessels remain combat effective?" 17 ships still show active weapons and propulsion, Captain. However, their formation integrity has been completely compromised. Estimated time to complete elimination: 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Reed nodded. Everything was going according to plan. But the plan was not just to destroy the Keth fleet. The plan was to send a message to the entire galaxy. That message was almost complete. Captain Marcus Reed felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders as he sat in his chair. Around him, his bridge crew played their parts perfectly. Sparks flew from damaged consoles that were actually working perfectly. Warning. Lights flashed from systems that were running better than they ever had. His people were good at their jobs, and their job right now was to look helpless. Engineering to bridge came a voice over the comm system. It was Tom Walsh, his chief engineer, and he sounded panicked. "Captain, we're losing power to the main engines. The reactor is showing critical readings. I don't think we can maintain life support much longer." Reed nodded, making sure his expression showed the proper amount of concern. The Keth were watching everything, analyzing every word and gesture. They needed to believe that the resilience was exactly what it appeared to be. A broken-down ship with a desperate crew. "Do what you can, Tom," Reed replied, his voice heavy with false despair. "We need those engines online if we're going to get out of this." Through his command display, Reed could see the Keth fleet moving into position. 212 ships, all of them focused on his single vessel. It was exactly what he had hoped for. Admiral Vorthok was predictable, just like all the intelligence reports had said. The Keth commander was arrogant, cruel, and most importantly, he liked an audience. The galaxy was watching. Perfect. Reed touched a control on his chair that was hidden from the cameras. Deep in the ship's belly, systems that had been dormant began to wake up. The resilience was not what it seemed. Not even close. 3 years ago, the human government had started a secret project. They had taken one of their most advanced stealth frigates and disguised it as a broken-down cargo hauler. Every scratch on the hull was carefully placed. Patch of mismatched metal hid advanced armor plating. Every spark from the bridge consoles was perfectly timed theater. The ship's true crew was not the 40 frightened humans that the Keth could see. Hidden throughout the vessel, in specially shielded compartments that blocked all sensors, were another 160 personnel. The finest warriors, engineers, and tacticians that humanity had to produce. "Captain," said his communications. "Officer, Lisa Park." She looked young and scared, just like she was supposed to. "The Keth are demanding that we power down all systems and prepare to be boarded." Reed pretended to consider this. He let his shoulders slump a little more. "We don't have much choice, do we? Tell them we're complying." But even as he spoke, his fingers moved across the hidden controls. Throughout the ship, his real crew was getting ready. Weapons that had never appeared on any sensor scan were being loaded. Systems that the Keth didn't even know existed were coming online. The Resilience had been built with one purpose in mind: to prove to the galaxy that humanity was not weak, that underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. Admiral Vorthak's voice filled the bridge again. Captain Reed, you will shut down all power except life support. My boarding teams will take control of your ship in 10 minutes. Any resistance will result in the immediate destruction of your vessel. Understood, Admiral Reed replied. He turned to his crew. You heard him. Power down all systems. The bridge lights dimmed. Consoles went dark. The ship's engine noise faded to almost nothing. To every sensor in the Keth fleet, the Resilience appeared to be completely helpless, but appearances could be deceiving in the hidden sections of the ship. Chief Weapons Officer David Kim was making final preparations. The quantum torpedo launchers were ready. Each torpedo was invisible to standard sensors and could phase through most types of shielding. The Keth had never encountered this technology. Before Dr. Sarah Chen, who everyone thought was just the ship's medical officer, was actually one of humanity's top tactical analysts. She had spent years studying Keth fleet formations and battle tactics. She knew exactly how they would position their ships, exactly how they would attack, and exactly how to turn their own strengths against them. In the engineering section, Tom Walsh was bringing the ship's most secret system online, AIDA, the Adaptive Intelligence Defense Array. It was an artificial intelligence designed specifically for combat. It could calculate attack patterns, predict enemy movements, and coordinate defensive measures faster than any biological mind. Reed watched his tactical display as the Keth ships moved closer. They were so confident, so sure of their victory. Admiral Vorthak had arranged his fleet in the classic Keith battle formation. It was designed to prevent escape and maximize firepower. Against a normal enemy, it would be devastating. Against the Resilience, it was a death trap. Captain, Lisa whispered, so quietly that the Keth sensors couldn't pick it up, all hidden. Systems are online. AIDA is ready. Weapons are locked and loaded. Reed nodded slightly. Around him, his visible crew continued to look defeated and scared. But beneath that surface, they were coiled springs ready to unleash destruction. The Keth boarding ships were launching now, small, fast vessels designed to attach to enemy hulls and cut their way inside. Reed could see them on his display, moving toward his ship like hungry predators. Admiral Vorthak, Reed said, his voice still carrying that tone of defeat. Before your people board my ship, I want to ask you something. The Keth commander's laughter echoed across the CUM system. You want to ask me something? You are in no position to ask anything, human, but I am feeling generous. Speak. Reed looked directly into the camera. His expression was still that of a beaten man, but deep in his eyes something had changed. I want to ask you about assumptions, Admiral, about the danger of believing that things are always what they seem to be. Vorthak's laughter grew louder. What are you talking about, human? You trying to confuse me with philosophy? Your ship is a wreck. Your crew is terrified. Your weapons are offline. What assumptions could I possibly be making? The first Keth boarding ship was almost at the Resilience's hull. Reed could see the cutting beams warming up, ready to slice through the outer plating. You assume, Reed said quietly, that we are what we appear to be. And then everything changed. The patched and damaged hull plates of the Resilience suddenly fell away, revealing the sleek, deadly lines of a warship underneath. Weapon ports that had been completely invisible opened along the ship's frame. Stuttering engines roared to life with power that no cargo hauler should possess. The transformation took less than 3 seconds. In that time, the Resilience went from looking like a piece of junk to revealing itself as one of the most advanced warships in human space. Admiral Vorthak's laughter died in his throat. Across his fleet, alarms began to sound as sensors suddenly detected weapon signatures and energy readings that should not exist. Captain Reed's expression changed too. The tired, defeated look melted away, replaced by the cold, professional demeanor of a combat veteran. When he spoke again, his voice carried the authority of a man who had never lost a battle. Admiral Vorthak, he said, you wanted to make an example of humanity for the watching galaxy, to allow us to return the favor. The remaining 17 Keth ships tried to form a defensive circle, but their formation was like a wounded animal trying to protect itself from a predator that had already gotten inside its guard. Captain Reed watched their movements with the cold calculation of a surgeon planning an operation. Ada analyzed their defensive pattern, Reed ordered. The artificial intelligence responded instantly. Enemy formation shows classic Keth defensive posture 7 alpha. Weakness identified. Ships must maintain minimum distance to avoid weapons interference. Recommendation: exploit gaps using debris field maneuvers. Reed smiled grimly. Even in their desperation, the Keth were predictable. They followed their training, their doctrine, their centuries of military tradition. That adherence to rules would be their destruction. The Resilience moved through the debris field like a shark through bloody water. Chunks of destroyed Keth vessels floated everywhere, creating a maze of metal and twisted wreckage. The human ship used this chaos to its advantage, disappearing behind large pieces of debris only to emerge from unexpected angles. Keth destroyer tried to target the Resilience but lost sight of it. Behind the wreckage of what had once been the cruiser Mighty Talon, the human ship emerged from the other side of the debris and fired a spread of micro-drones. Directly into the destroyer's engine ports, the small machines burrowed deep into the enemy vessel before exploding, causing a chain reaction that tore the ship apart from within. Admiral Vorthok watched his fleet die piece by piece. Each loss was not just a ship, but hundreds of trained crew members, veterans of dozens of campaigns. Ships that had taken years to build were being destroyed in seconds by an enemy that should not have been able to threaten even one of his vessels. All remaining ships concentrate fire on the human vessel, Vorthok ordered. Full power to weapons, ignore defensive protocols. It was a desperate command, and his surviving captains knew it. Abandoning defensive protocols meant they would be vulnerable to counterattack, but they had no choice. The human ship was picking them off one by one with surgical precision. 16 plasma cannons fired simultaneously at the Resilience. The combined energy output should have been enough to vaporize a small moon. But the human ship was ready for this too, as the energy beams converged on its position. The Resilience activated its most secret defensive system. The adaptive armor plating did not just absorb the incoming energy, it channeled it through internal conduits, 2 massive capacitors hidden throughout the ship's structure. For a moment, the human vessel glowed like a small star as it collected the attack. Then it released all that stored energy at once. The return blast was not a single beam, but a dozen focused streams of pure destruction that lanced out in all directions. Each beam found a Keth ship and burned through its hull like a hot knife through butter. 5 more vessels died in that single exchange, the crews never knowing what killed them. Tom Walsh monitored the energy systems from his engineering station. The power readings were beyond anything the Keth could imagine. The Resilience's reactor was not just a fusion plant, it was a miniature artificial star, contained by magnetic fields and fed by matter conversion systems that could turn any material into pure energy. "Captain, we're running hot on the power systems," Tom reported. "The energy absorption and redirection system is working perfectly, but we're generating more heat than we can dissipate through normal channels." "Understood," Reed replied. "Begin heat discharge protocols." The Resilience suddenly vented superheated plasma from ports along its hull. But instead of just disposing of waste heat, the ship directed these plasma streams at nearby enemy vessels. The Keth ships found themselves under attack by what appeared to be controlled solar flares, their shields overwhelmed by temperatures that belonged in the heart of a star. Dr. Sarah Chen coordinated the attack patterns from her tactical station. Her analysis of Keth's psychology had predicted this moment perfectly. "Captain, the enemy is beginning to show signs of panic. Their formation discipline is breaking down. Akeda calculates that 3 more ships will attempt to flee within the next 90 seconds. Then we'll be ready for them," Reed said, as if responding to Chen's prediction. 2. Keth frigates suddenly broke from the defensive formation and accelerated toward the edge of the debris field. Their captains had decided that running was better than dying, but they had underestimated their enemy once again. The Resilience launched a new type of weapon that the Keth had never seen before. hacking torpedoes, devices that contain sophisticated computer viruses designed specifically to penetrate Keth ship systems. The torpedoes didn't explode on impact. Instead, they attached to the fleeing ship's hulls and began boring through the armor with molecular cutters. Once they reached the internal systems, the viruses uploaded themselves into the ship's computers. Within seconds, the fleeing vessels lost control of their navigation, weapons, and life support systems. Their own computers turned against them, opening airlocks, overloading reactors, and sending false sensor data to their crews. The two frigates collided with each other at full speed, their computer systems convinced they were flying in completely different directions. The explosion lit up space like a brief new star, but the Resilience was not done demonstrating humanity's technological superiority. As the remaining Keth ships watched in horror, the human vessel began doing something that should have been impossible. It started to change shape. The ship's hull began to shift and flow like liquid metal. Weapon ports moved to new positions. The engine configuration altered to provide better maneuverability. Even the ship's basic outline changed, becoming more streamlined and predatory. This was nanotechnology on a scale that most species could barely imagine. The entire ship was constructed from programmable matter that could reconfigure itself at the molecular level. The Resilience could literally reshape itself to meet any tactical requirement. Admiral Vorthok stared at his displays in disbelief. "What are they?" he whispered to himself. "What have we awakened?" The answer came not from his own thoughts, but from the human captain's voice over the communications system. Reed had been monitoring Keth transmissions, listening to their growing panic and despair. "We are what you made us, Admiral," Reed said, his voice calm and steady. "For centuries, your empire and others like it have attacked human colonies, enslaved human populations, and dismissed us as weak and primitive. You never bothered to ask what we were doing during all those years of defeat and humiliation." The Resilience moved through the remaining Keth ships like death incarnate. It no longer needed to use conventional weapons. The ship simply moved, close to enemy vessels and extended tendrils of programmable matter that penetrated their hulls and began dismantling them from within. A Keth battleship tried to ram the human vessel in a final desperate act. But when the two ships collided, it was the Keth vessel that crumpled while the Resilience absorbed the impact and continued its deadly work. "We were learning," Reed continued. "Every defeat taught us something new about our enemies. Every loss showed us what we needed to become. We let you think you were winning while we prepared for this day." Lisa Park monitored the communications frequencies and reported to the captain. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 7 remaining ships. They're asking for mercy." Reed considered this for a moment. The galaxy was still watching. The message humanity wanted to send was almost complete, but it needed the right ending. "Tell them," Reed said finally, "that mercy is earned, not given. They showed no mercy to human colonies. They offered no quarter to human prisoners. But we are. Not them." The Resilience stopped its attack. The surviving Keth ships hung in space like broken toys, their weapons destroyed, their engines damaged, their crews terrified beyond measure. "However," Reed added, his voice carrying across all frequencies, "we are not monsters either. The surviving ships may leave. Return to your empire and tell them what you have seen here today." Admiral Vorthok's flagship was among the survivors, though it was barely functional. Most of his crew was dead, his weapons were gone. His once mighty vessel was held together by emergency power and prayers. But he was alive, and that was by design. Reed needed him alive to carry the message back to the Keth Empire and to the rest of the galaxy, the message that humanity was no longer the victim. It's no longer the weak species that could be bullied and enslaved. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human strength had begun. The silence in space was broken only by the hum of damaged Keth ships trying to maintain life support. Admiral Vorthok sat in his command chair, staring at the view screen that showed the human vessel floating among the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. 212 ships had entered this battle. Only 9 remained functional enough to limp home. Captain Reed's voice filled the comm channels. no longer speaking just to Vorthok, but to the entire galaxy that was still watching the live broadcast. Beings on hundreds of worlds had witnessed the impossible. A single human ship had destroyed one of the most powerful fleets in known space. "People of the galaxy," Red began, his voice calm and measured. "You have seen something today that your leaders hoped you would never see. You have seen what happens when humanity stops pretending to be weak." On the bridge of the Resilience, Reed stood before the main display, knowing that his image was being broadcast across star systems. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, no longer hiding their competence and professionalism. The time for deception was over. For 3 centuries, humanity has been the victim in this galaxy. Our colonies have been raided, our ships destroyed, our people enslaved. We have been called primitive, weak, inferior. Today, you learn the truth. Admiral Vorthok tried to speak, to say something, anything, but no words came. His throat felt dry as dust. The human captain was not finished with his message. "We allowed you to think we were weak because it served our purposes. While you celebrated your victories over human forces, we were studying you, learning your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. Every defeat taught us something new. Every loss made us stronger." The Resilience began to move slowly through the debris field, its hull shifting and changing as the programmable matter adjusted to new configurations. The ship looked different now than it had at the beginning of the battle, and it would look different again by the end. "The ship you see before you is not unique," Reed continued. "It is one of 50 identical vessels that humanity has built in secret. 50 ships, each capable of what you have witnessed today. We call them our Revelation-class warships because their purpose is to reveal the truth about human capabilities." This statement sent shockwaves through the watching galaxy. 50 ships like the Resilience meant that humanity possessed enough firepower to challenge any empire in known space. The balance of power had shifted in a single day, Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the communication channels and reported to Reed. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from the Altarian Republic, the Nexus Confederacy, and the Free Traders Alliance. They're all requesting immediate diplomatic contact." Reed nodded. This was expected. The major powers would want to reassess their relationships with humanity very quickly. But there were still things that needed to be said. "We did not build these ships for conquest," Reed continued his broadcast. "We built them for survival. For too long, humanity has been seen as easy prey by those who mistake patience for weakness. That ends today." Admiral Vorthok finally found his voice. "Captain Reed," he said, his tone no longer arrogant but filled with genuine fear. "What do you want from us?" Reed turned to face the Keth commander's image on the screen. "What do we want, Admiral? We want what every species wants. The right to exist without fear. The right to trade freely. The right to explore the galaxy. Without being attacked by those who think might makes right." The human captain paused, letting his words sink in across the watching galaxy. Then he continued with quiet intensity. "For 300 years, the Keth Empire has raided human space. You have taken our people as slaves, destroyed our colonies, killed our families. You did this because you thought we were too weak to stop. You were wrong." Tom Walsh reported from engineering that long-range sensors were detecting movement at the edge of the system. "Captain, we have multiple contacts incoming. Configuration suggests human fleet elements." Reed smiled slightly. The timing was perfect. "Ladies and gentlemen of the galaxy, I would like you to meet the rest of our diplomatic mission." 12 more ships dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Each one was sleek, powerful, and clearly built for war. They moved in perfect formation toward the battle site. Their approach timed to arrive just as Reed finished his demonstration. The message was clear. The Resilience had not been alone. This entire encounter had been planned, coordinated, and executed with precision that spoke of military planning on a massive scale. "These ships represent the new face of humanity in galactic affairs," Reed announced. "We are no longer victims. We are no longer prey. Any species that wishes to live in peace with humanity will find us to be generous allies and fair trading partners. But those who choose to see us as enemies will discover that we have learned very well from centuries of being hunted." Lisa Park. coordinated with the arriving fleet, establishing secure communications and updating them on the situation. The new arrivals took positions around the debris field, not threatening the surviving Keth ships, but making it clear that escape was only possible with human permission. Admiral Vorthok looked at his tactical displays and felt true despair for the first time in his long military career. 13 human warships surrounded his surviving vessels. Each one was clearly as advanced as the Resilience, and together they represented enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Admiral Vorthok, Reed said, his attention returning to the Keth commander. You and your surviving ships will be allowed to return to your empire. You will carry a message to your emperor and to any other leaders who might be listening. The human captain's expression became deadly serious. Humanity offers peace to all who want it. But we will no longer tolerate aggression against our people or our territories. The next fleet that attacks a human colony will not face outdated cargo ships and desperate defenders. They will face us. Reed gestured toward his tactical display, which showed the positions of all 13 human vessels. Tell your emperor that humanity has 49 more ships like these, stationed throughout our space. Tell him that our patience has limits, and those limits have been reached. The surviving Keth ships began to move slowly toward the edge of the system, their damaged engines struggling to maintain propulsion. Orthek's flagship was among them, limping away from the battle that had changed everything. But Reed was not finished with his message to the galaxy. To the Altarian Republic, the Nexus Confederacy, and all other civilized species who have treated humanity with respect, we extend our friendship and our protection. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper together. He paused, his expression growing cold again. It's those species and empires that have profited from human suffering, who have seen our people as nothing more than resources to be exploited. We offer this single warning. The age of human weakness is over. Remember every slight, every attack, every act of cruelty. Justice may be delayed, but it will not be denied. Dr. Chen reported that communication requests were flooding in from across the galaxy. Every major government wanted to establish immediate diplomatic contact with humanity. The revelation of human military capability had changed the entire political landscape in a matter of hours. Captain, Reed concluded his broadcast with words that would be remembered for generations to come. We are humanity. We asked for peace and prepared for war. We hoped for understanding and planned for conflict. Today, you have seen what we are capable of when pushed too far. Tomorrow, you will decide whether that capability is used for creation or destruction. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate what they had witnessed. On hundreds of worlds, military leaders were reassessing their threat evaluations. Diplomats were preparing new negotiation strategies. Trade representatives were calculating the opportunities that would come from treating humanity as an equal partner rather than a victim to be exploited. The Resilience and its escort fleet began their journey back to human space, leaving behind a field of debris that had once been the pride of the Keth Empire. The message had been delivered with brutal clarity. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's prey. The hunters had become the hunted, and the balance of power would never be the same again. In his private quarters aboard the Resilience, Captain Reed finally allowed himself to show the exhaustion he had been hiding. The battle had been won, the message delivered, but he knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had revealed its strength, but strength without wisdom could lead to the same cycle of violence that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. The real test would come in the days and years ahead. Would humanity use its newfound power responsibly? Would the galaxy accept the new reality? Or would it unite against the threat that humanity now represented? Only time would tell. But for now, the human ships sailed through the stars, no longer hiding in the shadows but moving openly as equals among the powers of the galaxy. The age of human strength had begun, and the universe would never be the same.